Yeah, there we go.
Amazing. After you,
Okay,
Muhammad.
so let me share my screen. Okay. Can you all see my screen?
100%.
Okay, great. So let me put you in presentation mode. Okay, thank you guys for all the thumbs up. Assalamu alaikum wa hayakallah. Thank you all for joining, and big thank you to Ibrahim and product folks for the invitation. Urdun is like the community in Urdun have been a community that personally has inspired me. I've worked with many amazing product managers that I've learned and benefited from personally from Urdun. So when Ibrahim reached out to me, I felt like it was my duty to, because I'd benefited so immensely from the community to give back to the community in some way. So thank you to Ibrahim and the people of Product Folks for this invitation. So today, as Ibrahim mentioned, we're going to talk about scaling user discovery. Um, I won't go into too much detail about myself. We already had a bit of an introduction from Ibrahim, but just as a quick recap, I was born in Manchester, hence this funny accent I have. This is a special Manchester accent. Moved to Saudi to Riyadh around 2 years ago to join Hunger Station. Saudi has always been a country that has had a special place in my heart. So when the opportunity came to join Hunger Station, it was an opportunity I couldn't turn down. I actually got into product management by mistake because I actually have a degree in economics. As you'll find, the product management community is a very diverse community with people from a lot of backgrounds. So I'm another example of that from economics. Didn't come from computer science or a degree, which is quite common pathway that people pursue. I was, as Ibrahim mentioned, the ex-head of product and design at Deloitte, which you may have heard got recently acquired by Tabi. Obviously, I mentioned I joined Hunger Station as well when I came to KSA 2 years ago. And yeah, I've got around like 9 years experience across the UK, European, American, and KSA markets. And what I really try to do with product management, especially since I've come to KSA, KSA is a very unique market, and there's certain rules and the universal laws that I thought that were true about product management that KSA breaks. So KSA taught me the real importance of localization. So I tried to bring in the localization from the East and the Western best practices of product management, bring these worlds together. I do believe if you bring these two worlds together, you can build something quite powerful and impactful in the region. Okay, so when I talk about user discovery means to me like what techniques can I use from a research method methods can I use to help me get to as high confidence as possible for the research goal I have. So each research goal has different pathways that you need to take to get to high confidence. Maybe it's an interview, maybe it's an A/B test, maybe it's a survey, maybe it's a workshop with your users or maybe it's a combination of all those things. So I think this is a great place to start in terms of when we think about user discovery, the goal as a PM, what we should have when we talk about user discovery is how can I get confidence in what I'm building and like medium to high confidence quickly as possible, and what different techniques can I use to do that? Okay, so specifically with regards to today's session, as Ibrahim mentioned, we're going to talk about how to do discovery at scale. And the reason why I chose this topic is because the concept of delivery has been documented, it's been recorded, there's loads of books, there's podcasts, there's articles everywhere, there's many thought leaders on the concept of delivery. So, you've got Scrum, Agile, you've got Scrum at Scale, you've got all sorts of frameworks out there. We've probably got too many frameworks that have confused people, if anything. But anyways, the whole point is like the whole concept of delivery has been really highly documented, and it's something we're all very, very familiar with. However, when you take a step back before we do delivery, we do user discovery, and then things become very, very unclear. User discovery in many organizations just means, oh, let's just book an interview and talk to customers, and then that's our discovery done. And you don't see much kind of documented and recorded on how to optimize discovery. You have a book by Teresa Torres, um, but apart from that, there really isn't much. And then what you find and what I've seen in a lot of organizations is discovery is something that is a bit chaotic, a bit uncontrolled, a bit undocumented, and isn't really smooth, and which is quite strange when you think about it because it doesn't matter how good your delivery process is. true value is only gained when you've done what a good discovery that's going to impact users, that's going to solve real user problems, and it's going to impact the business metrics. Otherwise, doesn't matter how many story points you deliver or how efficient your delivery cycle is, it's not really going to bring value to the organization. So this is why I've chosen this topic. So we're talking about discovery at scale here. So we're talking about, typically when we talk about scale, I'm kind of referring to on like a domain level, so or tribe level, where you have, for example, let's just say a shopping tribe within a food delivery application. So like for example, we have Hunger Station or Deliveroo or Dollarbat, uh, famous players globally. And within the shopping tribe, you could have a squad focused on the homepage. You could have a sub squad focused on the search and the listing. You could have a squad focused on the menu, a squad focused on the checkout. That all come under the domain of shopping. So how can we effectively do discovery on a domain level? This is what I mean when I talk about scale. So when we talk about on the problem statement level, what you typically find as organizations grow and the scale and they introduce new product teams, you'll typically find the fact that they may have some research resources or some designers doing some research as well and supporting the PM. And what you'll typically find is the big major projects, they will get support from the research resources they have, and everyone else has to kind of figure out what to do. They don't really get support for their initiative. Maybe it isn't a key business project, but it's still, it's a squad. It has research needs, and each squad has research needs. So as more teams join the organization, delivery becomes more difficult because you have more kind of bases to cover. There's more research goals. There's more interviews and sessions to book. There's more insights to analyze. There's more teams to align with. And not obviously there isn't that dedicated researcher that's typically put on priority projects. And user on top of all of these problems that you have is the fact that typically you would try your best to do user discovery, book workshops, book interviews, book various sessions with your users, usability sessions, prototyping, whatever it may be. But the reality is the users often don't even attend. So, maybe you've got like a 50% attendance rate. So despite all these challenges you have of the company kind of scaling and less focus in your particular area, less support for your research, and on top of that, people, your users often don't attend anyways. So it leads to, inadequate kind of discovery being done for these various reasons. Also, ultimately, kind of insufficient market research. We really don't understand our users well in those kind of non-critical business projects. So I've come up with like a 5-stage methodology on how to tackle this problem. So first, we're going to talk about how to define a hypothesis, and I'm going to explain what a hypothesis is and how to do this. And then as a domain, how you can align on segments and discovery methods, how to analyze your insights, how to realign, and then implement continuous discovery. Okay, so when we talk about hypothesis to begin with, hypothesis is anything that I, as a PM or me kind of working in that organization, believes is true. What the leadership thinks is true, what the user thinks is true, and what the people in the office thinks is true. This doesn't mean it's true, but these are kind of office rumors and comments that you hear on a regular basis that are floating around that have never been validated. So these are kind of hypotheses that we all have, and I'll go through a few examples. So we want to capture these hypotheses, and then when we capture them, we want to go through a process of, as we're PMs, we want to have good processes in place. We want to go through prioritization, and we want to prioritize these hypotheses because we can't, just like we can't build and deliver everything, we can't discover everything as well. So we need to go through a cycle of prioritization. Okay, so here are a few kind of random assumptions, and I'm just using like assumptions from food delivery apps, since this concept we're all familiar with. We all use food delivery apps. Just to use a universal example that we can all understand. So for example, in our food delivery app, customers, you may have an assumption that people in the company believe that customers always prefer faster delivery. So that's the most critical factor for users when ordering from our food delivery app. Discounts and promotions are the only ways to drive customer engagement. So this may be another belief that is widespread. Customers only stick to one platform. So when they find a platform they like, they're loyal to one platform. Once again, another assumption that we have about our food delivery app. Customers rarely use scheduled orders. So this is another assumption that we have about our food delivery app. So this is just a list of assumptions that we made. So with your, your other PMs within your domain should sit down together and list all the assumptions and all the things that you think are true, that your users think are true, that your leadership thinks are true about your application, and also, other people around in the office. So, what are the common kind of rumors that have been spread and the ideas that have been spread around your products. So next, we're going to talk about aligning on segments and discovery methods. So really, really simply, the way I see user discovery is you have a research goal. To validate that research goal, you need to find the segment that is linked to that research goal, and then you need a discovery method. You need a method to do the research, to validate that, to uncover that research goal and come to some kind of a conclusion. And you have a target segment that you work with when doing your user research. So that's what user discovery means to me. So when we talk about scaling user discovery, we want to focus on those, when we speak about that problem where you have limited kind of support on research, and there's increased amount of kind of goals and discovery needs because this company is scaling. We want to identify those opportunities where there are common kind of discovery methods that we're going to use, and common segments that we're going to serve. So you as a domain can kind of combine efforts, and I'll explain what I mean by this. So let's just go through an example here. So these are our 4 assumptions. So customers always prefer faster delivery. Discount promotions are the only way to get conversion or engagement. Customers only stick to one platform. Customers rarely use scheduled orders. So to this, we're applying like a priority to all these assumptions. So when I mean priority to an assumption, we're talking about how critical is it that I validate that this assumption is true? How critical is it to me, my product, my organization, my business goals, that this assumption is validated and we really understand if this assumption is true or not. And then we capture like the segment. So for example, this could be for all consumers, it could be for high coupon users and low coupon users, all consumers, and then users who use scheduled orders versus non-scheduled orders. So what you'll find here is now we want to capture the discovery techniques that will help us validate this assumption or research goal that we have. So for example, you could use surveys, user interviews, bearing in mind it's not always a one-for-one equation. This is the beauty of product management. Each kind of research goal needs a unique variation of discovery techniques, multiple discovery techniques. So there isn't, like this is a challenge of product management, there isn't a one-size-fits-all kind of guide you can give. You really have to use your own intuition and your own experience to pick the right technique, and do the right analysis. But in this example, so we can see of highlighting surveys, user interviews, surveys, user interviews, surveys, user interviews. So we can see commonality in terms of discovery techniques that we're using. Now let's look for commonalities amongst the segments. So okay, this instance that we're using, we've got commonality in the segment in terms of all consumers, high coupon users and non-high coupon users are also a segment within all consumers. So the point I want to capture here is there's common segments and there's common discovery techniques. And then we talk about the problem of, often when you hire and try to do hiring for user interviews, for workshops, for prototyping, for usability testing, people often don't show up. So rather than booking, for example, 3 interviews for 3 different user discovery goals across 3 different squads, why don't we just book one where there's commonality with the segment and with the discovery technique? We can book one interview and structure the interview where we have different sections to serve different research goals. So as we can use interviews or commonality here, we've got commonality in the segment. So we'll structure the user interview to have a section to do with delivery, and we'll have a section to do with promotions, and we have a section to do with scheduling orders, for example. This allows us to scale our user discovery efforts where we only need 1 interview instead of 3. And it makes it a lot more efficient when we talk about all the other challenges, when it comes to hiring people, when it comes to getting resources to support your researching activities. So this is ultimately being a bit more organized on a domain level, where you align with your PMs in your domain, helps to avoid unnecessary duplication and silos being created. Not only does it help to kind of remove duplication, it also helps to create a wider and shared understanding of your domain. And how often do you kind of hear product management managers talking about, like, thinking about products as in, in this food delivery application, I only look after search. So the problem like this consumer is talking about is menu, and so you're going to have to talk to the menu PM. When you talk about the users they don't care. It's you know you're a food delivery application. They don't care about the different divisions in your product team. They just see you as somebody who works for the food delivery application. So it really helps create that holistic understanding of how the user transitions from one product to another product that you guys own internally, but how they pursue like go on that journey and how you can then build a journey that is more seamless from one transition to another transition of the product. Okay, now we're going to talk a bit about analysis. This is really, really important because now we're talking about, shared shared kind of research goals amongst multiple PMs who may be carrying out a research activity. So how do we analyze all these different insights? Because we may have insights to do with delivery, we may have insights to do with coupons, we may have insights to do with a particular feature. So how do we analyze this and make sure, that we are able to capture the relevant insights and sort them effectively? So I like to use personally a technique that was inspired by data science. The technique is quite simple. It looks a lot cooler here. It really isn't that complicated, and let me show you. Um, so this is something I would typically create where I would capture the user, I would capture the segment that they belong to, and I'll then capture the feedback and along with a theme and a sub-theme. So let's just break this down a bit. So what I highly recommend you guys doing is when you do these user interviews or you do another discovery technique where you're able to get insights and quotes from your users, um, capture each individual piece of feedback, each unique piece of feedback that gives you a unique piece of insight about a particular area or a particular problem. Capture it and separate out in each individual line. So, for example, when we talk about here, this particular user, Ahmed, would rather pay full price than deal with an app that has crashes or errors. So this is a particular feedback about, the app performance being important to him and pricing. So, and then we've got another piece of feedback where I've had too many bad experiences with the cheapest options, where the food arrives cold and I can't find my location. So this is once again, it's feedback around pricing and delivery experience. Let's go through another example. Ibrahim says switching between different apps depending on which one has the best service. So this is a piece of insight that we've got around using different food delivery apps. So then based upon this feedback, apply a theme and a sub theme. So a theme here, when we're talking about full price and the crash, a theme could be pricing. When we're talking here about delivery speed, the main theme could be delivery speed. We're talking about loyalty to the app, it could be loyalty to the app or switch between apps. The main theme here is to do with scheduling. So tag all your unique pieces of insights with a theme and then supplement them with a sub theme. This allows you to essentially have very unstructured data and insights, which is what you get from user interviews. They're unstructured, and they can, not just user interviews, it could also be insights from surveys or workshops or whatever it may be. But essentially, you get a lot of these unstructured insights, and tagging allows you to add some structure to these insights, which makes analysis a lot easier. So essentially, what just basic tagging allows you to do is just, through your tagging, you can easily just create a pivot table, and then which allows you to sort and see which are the most common topics and the insights you're getting. Really, really easy. This is a poor man's way to do it. Obviously, there's more sophisticated ways to do it with advancements in AI, which you can by all means try with ChatGPT or Gemini. But this is a really quick poor man's way to do it, where you can easily set up and get some analysis done on the common patterns of insights that you're getting. When doing this tagging process, I highly recommend that you are sat together, your 3-4 PMs in a particular domain, and you sat together to do this tagging exercise. So you have a shared understanding and a common language that you all agreed upon. So one person calls it pricing, and we don't have another person who didn't attend the session, doesn't know what pricing means, and he calls it, I don't know, costing. And another person calls delivery speed, and another person calls switching between apps and loyalty. So you just create that commonality in terms of the language that you use for tagging. So it all means the same things to everybody in that squad. And then as I mentioned, you could create a really simple poor man's solution where you could just create a pivot table and you can see all your insights really easily. It's just a great, powerful way to structure all your insights and make sure your insights don't become lost. Particularly as I would recommend, like in user interviews, to be semi-structured, generally speaking, where you have a structure to follow around your research goals. But if you get taken to a direction that is kind of unexpected, based on what the user feedback gives you, and go deeper and understand the motivations behind that particular feedback. And what the great thing about tagging, it allows very unstructured insights where you could go left, right, everywhere with your user interviews based upon what that particular user is giving you. But it doesn't matter because you can then structure it back through tagging, and then with some basic pivot table skills, which I'm sure you will have through Excel or Google Sheets, you can then do some analysis and see what are the most common points being raised by users. And then we're going to talk about like realigning. So realigning is then for an opportunity for you and the PMs to take a step back and review what are the common themes and the common topics, and then realign in terms of actions that we should take and how to take things forward. So this is a short session that we're talking about specifically about scaling user discovery. We will need a separate session to talk about opportunity solution tree, but this is, if you're not aware of this model, it's a model created by Tracy Torres, which is a really powerful way to visualize, different ways to, different ways and different opportunities to resolve a particular outcome, a business outcome or a desired goal. So you could use all your imports to develop opportunity solution tree. I'm just trying to highlight the point that this kind of research that you've done, the analysis that you've done, is going to be inputs for you to then take things further and then to build solutions eventually. So an opportunity solution tree could be something that you pursue. Likewise, you could also pursue creating a user journey map. These inputs could help you as on a domain level create that user journey map. So about how we transition, you could have a squad for registration, you could have a squad for onboarding, and how to transition between those products. And your user discovery insights can help provide useful guidance for that. And the final step we're going to talk about briefly is how to repeat continuous discovery. So just putting this on repeat. So as we mentioned, like you want to capture your most common user segments and also capture your most common discovery methods, and taking those two together, and you can block out a couple of hours every week, and you can nominate 1 PM every week, and you can alternate to book and organize and manage your discovery sessions. So you have 2 hours booked with this particular user from this particular user segment, and then you PMs, you organize your research goals around which research goals aligns with this particular segment. Okay, this week we've got somebody who's an active coupon user. Okay, we've got some research goal around coupons. Let's speak to him. Or we have some other research goals where any user we can speak to, we can speak to them about this particular goal. So it just means we always have that continuous cycle of where we're continuously learning. And this is where you could eventually take this process once you become mature with it. So dedicate potentially a PM every week to take ownership of booking the sessions, managing all the research goals, and making sure we capture somebody from the right segment. And make sure this is a really powerful way. Just make sure you have a couple of hours every week to continuously learn and discover your users. And then as you continuously do this discovery, the idea is your user journey map isn't a one-off exercise. It evolves all the time as you get new insights. So consistently update your user journey map. Likewise, your opportunity solution tree, continuously kind of update that. So that's an outline on how to do user discovery at scale. Let's just do I know I've spoken a lot, so I'm just going to give a very quick summary of what we've discussed today, and then inshallah we can move on to any questions that you guys have. So just a reminder, why user discovery at scale is a topic that is really, really important, because we have a lot of kind of great material out there, a lot of experts out there that talk about how to do kind of discovery at scale. But we as PMs, we know that even if you do discovery well and you deliver a lot of user story points, this isn't a guarantee in terms of what you deliver is going to actually be valuable. This is where your discovery comes in. So this is, for some reason, it's an area that isn't really being focused on in the industry. which is a big shame because I would argue it's more critical than the delivery. Because if your discovery is not done well, your deliveries it's not going to, it doesn't matter how efficient your delivery is of your software. The value ultimate impact it's going to have is going to be limited. Um, Dave, and then we kind of spoke about defining a hypothesis. So remember, your hypothesis is whatever you think is true, what the leadership thinks is true, and what the user thinks is true, and what is kind of common beliefs within the offices in the office with various teams and your colleagues. So we were trying to capture, the things, the hot topics that keep being spoke about in your office that are causing a lot of noise, are causing frustration, that are common beliefs that people have, but they're never really being validated. And this is what we are trying to capture when we talk about these hypotheses. And then we talk about, capturing these hypotheses and creating a shared understanding with the PMs under your domain. So remember, when we talk about domain, we talk about multiple squads in a particular area. So for example, as mentioned, under like a food delivery app, you may have a shopping domain where you've got the home, a team that looks after the home screen, a squad that looks after search, a squad that looks after listing, a squad that looks after menu, a squad that looks after checkout, for example. And this is all under one domain. You want to find, common kind of segments and discovery methods across that domain that you guys can, collaborate on to avoid duplicated efforts. And then, you can work together, collaborate together to document all your assumptions, capture the segments that you need to do discovery with, and capture the discovery techniques. So the idea, as mentioned, to capture the common segments and the common discovery techniques to avoid any duplication of booking, multiple discovery sessions when you only need one session. You've got the right segment. You'll want to validate using the same discovery techniques. So combine efforts together and do research more efficiently. To avoid duplication and being siloed. And then we've talked a bit about like how to analyze these insights. So applying a theme. So you mentioned applying the theme, for example, pricing here, and then also applying a sub theme. And this just is a very powerful way, a data science inspired way to organize all your research insights and apply structure because research can be very unstructured at times. You can receive insights that take you to unexpected pathways, and you want to dig deeper to understand these motivations and why your user is taking you to this path. And then but this allows you to kind of structure it back by applying a tag or a theme to these insights, and then through a really basic poor man solution that you could use, just using a pivot table, you can see the most common themes, which is the most sophisticated techniques to do this. If any of you can have a bit of light engineering skills, you can look at playing around and experimenting with AI solutions through this summary review. But this, I want to create like a solution that anybody can use. And then, the important thing is doing that realignment with your team on all these insights, what to do with all these insights, understand how these insights transition from one product to another. So you could use opportunity solution tree. You can also use user journey maps, whatever you deem more suitable. So we're not going to go into too much details on these tools because they are separate sessions in themselves. And a reminder, when you do tagging, make sure that you, as a team, do tagging together so you have a shared common understanding of what these tags mean. And then, just to summarize and then to finalize and conclude, all these activities should put you in a position where once you get mature and comfortable with these activities, where you just do continuous discovery, where you regularly have sessions booked for user discovery, users shared alignment and understanding around the segments and the discovery method, and you regularly have opportunities as a PM every week to continuously learn about users and continuously develop better understanding around your discovery goals. So like a practice I highly recommend is alternating with different PMs. One PM can take ownership 1 week of booking the interviews, scheduling the sessions, and organizing the research goals and the structure of that session. And then another week, another PM can take over. But it's essentially combining efforts towards some of those common goals and the kind of common efforts that you have to avoid unnecessary duplication and misalignment, and also avoid becoming siloed when you're in a domain and we're trying to scale user discovery. Okay, cool. I've spoken enough now. So Ibrahim, if you've got I don't know if
Yes,
the community has any questions.
amazing. Thank you, Muhammad. I'm gonna open up the space for Q&A, and while that, I'm gonna also, you guys can ask your question in the Q&A session, or in the section, or in the chat. For me, I have a couple of questions, if you don't mind, Muhammad.
Yes.
So you mentioned multiple discovery techniques,
Yes.
but yes, we will be sharing. We'll be sharing the slides, that's inshallah. But what is the most common one? I believe is the user interview. From
Yes.
your experience, what do you think? How can you help us think? Yani, for this one, let's do surveys. For this one, let's watch some recording. For this one, let's do user interview. And what kind of things? How can we think about it as
No,
PM?
really, really good question, Shukran Ibrahim. This is where, like, right at the start of this session, I don't know if anybody remembers, I highly recommend this particular framework, which is to do with like your confidence. So what you should think about is how can I, for this particular user research goal, how can I get to as medium and high level of confidence as possible for that particular goal? So which techniques are going to allow me at speed to get high confidence? Because it's ultimately a goal of speed. Business is made fast. We can't spend forever doing discovery. So really think about, what tools will allow me to get up here as quickly as possible. And you should like customize this based upon each research goal. What high confidence means for one research goal is another. What it looks like for a new subscription program will be very different for just like a calendar syncing feature. So this is what I would recommend. Just taking a step back, thinking about how can I get high confidence in what I'm trying to validate as quickly as possible.
Okay, great. Another question would be, do you think is there any difference if I'm having a B2B product versus a B2C product when it comes to product discovery? Will you think, and yeah, commonality versus differences when you're
Yeah,
thinking
so
about?
no, so really good question. So there's still you'll still have, regardless if you're doing B2B or B2C, you'll still have commonality in terms of segments and discovery methods. Where discovery differs between the two is B2C, you have a lot more sensitivity around like user experience and small changes that can have a major impact on conversions. So you will track, you do a lot more tracking around your funnels, your conversions. There'll be a lot more A/B testing for part of your discovery. Because a small change in B2B doesn't really impact metrics majorly, whereas B2C they can do. So hence why like experimentation, sensitivity of UX is a lot higher, and you will use a lot more A/B testing from a discovery point of view.
Okay, great. My final question before I open it up for everyone. Sometimes you might get from like peers or even from management. Let's say you have done I don't know, 5, 10 user interviews, and I think we try to, and we stop when we reach like a trend, right? When there's like a trend between these users.
Yep.
But sometimes I would say the comments coming back might be like, oh, okay, these are like 10 users, but we have like 5,000 users. I don't think this is a good enough data to take a, you know what I mean? Like that could be a pushback sometimes. What do you
Yeah,
say to
no, really good question. And I go back to this model again in the sense that like you want to apply confidence, so there's confidence to yourself, but there's also confidence to leadership. You want to present insights in a way that is kind of supporting and is going to be convincing to them. So there may be a point where you get confidence in yourself, but also think about how can I get to this high medium confidence for my leadership. So maybe you need to look at more quantitative insights, from the data sets, from behavioral analytics, from venting, heat maps. Maybe you want to pursue surveys, but really understand, your leadership and what motivates them and what motivates them and triggers them to make certain decisions, and make sure you present discovery in a way where it kind of leans toward that as well. So that would be my best piece of advice.
Nice, amazing. Okay. Guys, if you don't have any question to write it, you can also raise your hand and we can have you like also ask your question directly to Muhammad. Okay, Omar,
Oh,
go ahead.
well done.
Right. Actually, I had a question regarding user discovery or surveys actually.
Yep.
So how do you go about designing surveys or coming up with survey questions to get unified data? I mean, that you can compare across different customers.
So just to understand the question, how to write surveys to get unified data with different customers.
Yeah.
Okay, but like why is there a reason particularly why we're talking about surveys? Just so I understand the question a bit better.
The reason is that for uh, my purpose, I mean, the only way to get accurate data is very subjective. So I would have to talk to people, and that's why I'm either looking at interviews or surveys. And I'm covering a large region, which is why I'm inclining more towards surveys. So going in the region and talking to the customers is a bit more difficult. Um, and so maybe like a standardized survey. And even in interviews, I mean, the conversation can go lots of different directions. So you don't always collect unified data that's comparable across customers.
Okay. I think I get the question. Okay. So first and foremost, like surveys are good and they're great to get quantitative insights, but they shouldn't be the only technique that you use, because the challenges you have with surveys, they're going to be high level. You won't understand the context and the motivation behind some of the answers. So use them as something to give you like high level trends about your users, but then also pursue other kind of techniques based upon, like, if we go back to concepts I mentioned earlier, like when you have assumptions, you really want to talk about like how critical is it that I validate these assumptions. Um, so if the criticality of this assumption, we can only partially validate through surveys, then I'll pursue kind of other discovery techniques as well. But surveys will give you like a high level overview, and it can give you patterns for you to then dig in deeper with your user interviews. But yeah, that's how I would treat surveys.
Just to follow up on that,
Yeah.
and more specifically, like survey questions. Like, is there some kind of template? It's if you ask basic questions, you're gonna get basic answers. So the questions are very important as well. The kind of questions you're asking. So how do you come up with the right questions, I guess?
Yeah, but like it goes back to like your research goals. So it needs to be focused around your research goals and the depth of insights you want around your research goals. Obviously, you need to be mindful in terms of when you do surveys and interviews in general, about the language you use, and you don't cause like confirmation bias by indicating that this is great and this is great and this is not great, and you kind of direct your users to think in a certain way. Um, but like, yeah, look, the quality of like insights that you would get. Um, so focus on your research goals and how the specific questions that will really give you as much depth as possible with those research goals, and ultimately like experiment, some survey, like the problem you have with like doing user discovery at times. Things can be subjective in terms of how people interpret things. So experiment with like maybe a small segment and see like the kind of answers that they're giving you. They're giving you the kind of insights that you want. They're not giving the kind of insights or the answers that you're hoping for. And think about potentially rewording or restructuring your survey. But it will take a little bit of, I would say, like trial and error and experimentation to really find something that gives you the kind of insights that you want from your users.
All right, thank you.
Well, if I may add, Muhammad, what do you think? There always the advice of having open-ended question as well, right? Not to have closed question, maybe, and not to have
Yeah,
leading question, right?
yeah, good question, good point. So like closed-ended questions is really like almost binary, like yes, no, and maybe a few other options. And you want specific answers. And open-ended is there is when used really useful to use open-ended questions just to get context and reason and motivations behind some of the answers given. So one is just there to give really closed yes no binary like insights, and then open-ended is great. Is trying to get some context in some of your like surveys.
100%. I think after just a second, we go to Abdullah's question and then we go to you, Muhammad. Correct me. The output from the interviews with the customer is jobs to be done. Is that right?
It can be like the jobs to be done. Like you need to obviously analyze your interview insights and then prioritize and decide which ones you want to take actions on. So basically, interview insights. If you want to use a job to be done framework, you can do. It can be like an input to that framework.
All right, we go to Muhammad.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله.
First of all, أخي محمد جزاك الله خيرا for the wonderful presentation. A lot of things to learn from, definitely.
Thank you.
So I have a specific question with regards to, I would say, what Brother Omar mentioned earlier, within the lines of surveys.
Yep.
The question, so within the B2B settings, right?
Yes.
If I'm let's say building a product for a B2B, and I've decided one of the methods of user research is surveys that I'm going to be opting for. Of course, I do definitely agree that you should be doing mix and match in terms of the methods you're going to be going. But particularly with regards to surveys, how do one motivate users to answer? Because since it's going to be open end and it's going to be let's say not binary, one yes and no, so how can you motivate? I'm not sure. It probably is going to be that's what I'm thinking about. Like are there some techniques which you've utilized? Or
so that's a good question. So like typically it's quite common to have like 5% response rate in surveys. Surveys generally are not going to get huge response rates, and that's quite common practice expectations in the market. In terms of like motivating users to fill in this survey, it really depends. Like if it's a problem that users are really passionate about, then naturally they're going to be more motivated to fill them in. Yes, you could look at other ways to incentive in terms of offering them some kind of incentive, whether it's like a coupon, a discount, a voucher, or some freemium options in your products to motivate them. So there is like a monetary motivation, and then there's like motivation from the perspective of like the product itself and the company itself. Because naturally, if it's a really sensitive topic and it's a really frustrating topic, you'll find people generally more inclined. Another thing you can do is just obviously be a bit more targeted in terms of your surveys. Make sure you find the right kind of segments, the right kind of people who are more likely to respond. So those are a few different ways where you could, like increase the motivation around your surveys being kind of response rate.
Jazakallah khair.
Oh yeah.
I remember the question, Muhammad.
Yes.
Do you recommend talking to different people each time, or is it fine to reach out to the same users, let's say, for another like session in a month or two?
Yeah, really good question. I would say like you usually want to get like differing perspectives, but there may be a particular user that gives you really good perspective in a particular area, and you're really like, okay, let me save this particular user and use him for a future research goal because he gives me a lot of really great insights and he has a lot of expertise that will be really user. So you will be instances where you want to save certain users for certain research goals. Definitely, and then there will be instances where you want different perspectives. So yeah, it really kind of depends on what your research goals are, and then what your kind of insights that that particular user provide you that could be useful for you in the future. That warrants you kind of keeping a relationship with him.
Amazing. Do you guys have any other question, Muhammad? All right. Okay, Amin, go for it.
Yes, a bit more.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
So this is Amin from Pakistan. So I've been, and first of all, thank you for taking the time out and sharing your experience with us. And thank you, Ibrahim, for arranging this session.
Yeah,
Um,
welcome.
so, so my question is around discovery in B2B segment. So I've been in product management for around 4 years now, and uh, I mean, when you are working with a small company, you don't have everything, all the processes in place. So you don't have that discovery mechanism or the process in place, right? So in most of the cases, we in B2B we don't really have access to the end users, right? And then with the agile and the Scrum method, we need to deliver every 2 weeks, right? So how do you get enough time to discover, let's say you are introducing a new feature, and how much time do you think is sufficient in order to have the discovery, and how do you basically uh, what should I say, like the balance between discovery and the delivery?
Okay, sure. There's quite a few questions there, but let me just start with the first one there. With regards to like in a B2B setting, sometimes it can be difficult to get access to the end user. So in this scenario, you want to think about like the different teams, the different kind of points in your business where the end user would interact. For example, your contact center team, your sales team, your operations team, and see if you can use those guys to help you get into contact with your end user. So those are tactics I've used in the past. Just looking at checkpoints where they interact with my business and using them as like a gateway to help me kind of do my discovery. I believe the second question you asked was with Agile and bi-weekly deliverables. How can we ensure time to do discovery? So I would say like with discovery, I would say there's like two phases of discovery, you could say. So when you join a company for the first time, and you're really kind of starting from ground zero, then I would say like at this point in time, you need to invest in kind of doing aggressive discovery, getting, as many interviews, 10, 15, 20 interviews set up. So you just really get an overall understanding of your users, the problems, the pain points, why they are users, why they have continued being users, what motivates them, what's stopping them from really loving your product. So you just get like a baseline understanding. And then like you want to implement, like we kind of spoke about, like continuous discovery after that. So you get a good kind of baseline understanding of your business and your users, and then you kind of do continuous discovery where you do some more bite-sized discovery. And then when we go back to that confidence wheel, you really want to think about, okay, you've got these, you need to regularly deliver, but how can I ensure that I get to, quick discovery and get these quick insights where I can also support delivery as well. But also, by the way, like as a product manager, have the courage to say, like I extend the sort of sprint or delay certain things because you don't have the discovery right now. It doesn't mean like, because we have to deliver all the time, or focus on tech debt, whatever it is. But it doesn't mean because we have to deliver all the time that we should deliver things that don't have proper discovery with them. That doesn't have proper discovery, doesn't have a proper PRD, doesn't follow the proper kind of product discovery life cycle. Um, and we can't properly articulate what the problem statement is. We can't properly articulate any data or any success metrics on the impact on users, and we should just go ahead and build it. So the PM really, enforce, the proper discovery to happen to really understand the impact. If that means sometimes that you have to, delay certain features, that's fine. Communicate that back to the business. It's important that we build the right thing with the right impact rather than just building for the sake of building.
Thank you so much, Shagan.
Thank you, Muhammad, for the question, for the answer. Okay, we have Maruf. We have a question.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum
This
salam.
is Maruf from Pakistan. So I've worked for an edtech startup and I rely heavily on user interviews for
Yep.
discovery. So I have like a three-part question, but I really want to know like what's like a ideal number of user interviews to test an assumption, And second would be, what's like an ideal duration for a user interview to be that's good enough to like get the necessary insights. And the last part would be that you also mentioned was that you can find common themes, and rather than doing multiple interviews, you can ask or test those assumptions in the same interview. So how many themes should are we allowed to test it before we are overdoing it?
Yeah, so really good question. So, sorry, what was the first question?
So basically, the number of user interviews to test an assumption.
Okay, so number of user interviews, test an assumption. Once again, I keep talking about the confidence meter. But this is it's an open-ended question because it really depends on the complexity of the problem that you're trying to solve. It really depends on the size of your user base, the number of segments that are touched, and then you have to think about all these kind of factors, and then you need to think about all these factors. What do I need to do to get to that high confidence that we've spoken about? So this is the thing with product management. I can't give you one answer that you can apply in every situation. This is product management. Like you have to apply. You learn the tools, you learn the concepts, but the application differs from every scenario to another. But these are some of the factors that you should think about. Apologies, what were the other questions?
The duration, I think, also the second one.
Duration. Yeah, duration. Like you really want to think about like your users and typically like how much attention span they're going to have. Typically, generally speaking, I try to keep it 45 minutes to an hour because I don't want to burn out some of the kind of the recipients, my users. But you want to make ideally the interview as palatable and easy for them to conceive as possible. You don't want to burn them out. So typically, I do 45 minutes to an hour. But it may vary from one user group to another. But that's general best practice I would recommend. And then how many? Really good question you asked. How many kind of research goals should we serve in one interview? I would say you use some common sense in terms of if it's really complex kind of research goal, then maybe separate out to its own separate interview. Don't try to, and also give each research goal its time as well. And if you don't think you can fulfill all these research goals in 45 to 60 minutes, then separate them out. So just use some common sense. But in instances where you can validate a research goal or get some validation for a research goal with 4 or 5 questions, 10 minutes an interview, then it makes sense to combine efforts during that interview. But when there is too many research goals and there's complexity, then use some common sense and break them up.
Amazing.
Yeah, thank you for the insights.
Thank you. We have a couple of questions here on the chat I'm going to ask.
Sure.
Ahmed is asking, how can you engage potential users or stakeholders even before building the product?
Okay, so how can you engage with them before building the product? So yeah, there's many kind of tools and techniques you can use. Common technique is kind of like a landing page MVP, where you sell the idea of your product and people are like ready to click on it because they're ready to sign up the product, and it's just a landing page MVP, and then you just capture the email. So that could be one way of just to capture people potentially interested. And obviously another way is networking, ultimately finding where your users are and going to the relevant events or relevant forums and or the relevant places online where you can find them. A famous story that I always mention is, I don't know if anybody knows how Dropbox started, but Dropbox literally started by, before they even built the product, they created a YouTube video just explaining what Dropbox is, and it got a load of people excited. People loved the concept, and that was one way that they validated their business idea before they actually built anything. But really, just look for those channels and those opportunities for reaching out to your users and where they are in their format. Another example is Deal, who literally I think they're doing around 330 million in ARR, in annual recurring revenue. They're a HR solution and a payroll solution. These guys just started from answering questions around HR and payroll that people had for remote workers on Reddit. So they started on Reddit. So just look for those places where your users exist, and then pursue those places to do your kind of discovery with them.
Amazing. We have a question from Yazid. Okay, so he's saying, I'd like to hear more about validation and how it fits within your approach or different techniques to doing product discovery. Also, how do you validate that you're discovering product in the right direction and achieving the right impact strategically and tactically?
Yeah,
That-
so good question. So when it comes to, how do I know like I'm using the right discovery techniques? We're getting the right insights and getting a guide before. That's a really good point, a really good question. And what I would say is like as a PM, and we take a step back from all of this, is it's really important to understand like context behind your product and your business. So, have your key metrics, which we kind of call like your morning coffee dashboard that tells you what's going on in your world. Also, regularly understand, what is sales kind of being asked about, what is the kind of common tickets that are coming through the contact center. So you just have some, regular context about what's going on in your business, what's going around your product. And then, sometimes you get like user interview insights that are completely in opposite direction of all of these. So this is like a red flag. Okay, I need to dig in a bit deeper. This is why it's really, really important to consume information from multiple different directions. So I'll give you an example of this. So when I was at Dwake is a digital wallet here in Saudi. When we did user interviews, and we did a lot of user interviews, maybe 50 to 70 user interviews, we were quite aggressive in doing because we really wanted to do a in-depth consumer study. When we asked about are people actually interested in physical cards, this was an assumption that we had in the office, and nobody in the interviews cared about physical cards. However, but when we looked at social media, we looked at our support page on social media, everybody was asking for physical cards. So this is where it's important. Particular users will use particular channels and particular ways to give you feedback, but that doesn't mean that their feedback is always valid. It's always important to contextualize.
Amazing. Amazing. We have time just for one final question. I don't know if anyone have any burning question that we can conclude with. You can write it on chat or you can raise your hand. And if not, that also is fine. Okay, amazing. I think we had a really good informative session. Thank you very much, Muhammad, for your time today. And thanks everyone for joining. Inshallah, we will be sharing with you guys the presentation and the recording. And inshallah, with a lot more collaboration, inshallah, with Muhammad in the future. So thank you very much for your time, Muhammad. It was really a pleasure.
No, thank you very much. Really enjoyed the session. Thank you for the invitation. And thank you all for joining. I really enjoyed the engagement and the back and forth with you guys. And yeah, I look forward to inshallah sharing more knowledge and also learning from you guys as well in the future. So all the best, inshallah.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Thank you, guys.